Jan's house. My name's Barbara Hooper and this is Julianne Allcorn, and we're great friends and artists, but guess what? We've got a great story to tell you. Haven't we, Julie?
We do.
Julie was the squatter's wife in the ABC program Outback House. Do you remember that? Oh, what a wonderful story they had. And she was a great squatter's wife too. Put up with all those, macho men and...
I don't think the rest of the crew would actually agree with that, but still, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of good memories. A lot of selective memories, I think, by my children who are out there, but it's not talking about exactly what happened at Outback House that we're here for. It's talking about what we'd like to do with going back to Outback House and calling it Outback Revisited. Outback House was a television series filmed by the ABC in 2004. They took 16 participants back to a sheep station in 1861 to live the life of people who worked on a sheep station. My family and I were chosen for the squatters. There were over 5,000 people applied for the positions, and one family and then an overseer and his wife. There were 2 cooks because we had a little bit of hassle, a couple of governesses because one was ill, and we had shearers, and we had the life of the 19th century without any 21st century mod cons. And when you have 3 months of living within those confines, no electricity, no running water, and with the clothes which we have around us now, your perceptions change, your feelings change towards how many things you need around you. You don't have any visuals around you for telling you what to buy, where to go. So it's very confronting, and it awakens your senses. And when I came back, I wanted to take people out there to experience that on a short-term project, and that's where Barbie, who came with me last year to look at it, came back with the same energy and the same idea to get together and take artists out to this film set.
It's a very inspiring place, actually. It's a 10,000 acre sheep property owned by the Turl family, Scott and Liz. They've been there for 6 generations since the 1840s, and I don't think they've thrown anything away that whole time.
No.
So you can imagine it is filled with history, tradition, family experiences, and it's just the most wonderful place to visit. The land itself, the landscape, has presence that I've never felt anywhere else. It's just a glorious place to be. It's pretty, it's a soft, gentle rolling hills, and it's a sheep station, so of course it's a working sheep station, and we've just got to move around what the rest of them are doing. But our purpose is to take artists out there for a long weekend just to immerse ourselves in this art and history and Indigenous culture, to get some reaction to how we live as urban dwellers, and then going out into the country and getting that feeling of contrast, because it's nothing the same. And it will be beautiful to not just do it, the difference between the city and the country, but the city 21st century and the country 19th century. The photograph you're looking at now was taken my first glimpse of Oxley Downs. You can imagine driving. Julie didn't tell me how far we were away, or...
I never tell you when they're approaching it, because it's in a valley.
It's beautiful. You come over the hill and then that's what you see. It's the most glorious experience.
We've been invited by Scott and Liz to actually return to the homestead in 1861 and live in the shearers' quarters, of which the shearers today stay in. So we do have running water in that section, but it's just above camping. But we go out to Oxley Downs where there is no electricity. We have a drop loo, and the amenities are zilch, and it's that basic. Being able to basic.
It's basic, but it's well, how it was.
That's right. And taking a group of people out there to actually live in history and create in history and see those senses come alive, that's what the big interest to me is, and to talk about how I coped as a female in 1861 and to share my knowledge, but also to reap the benefits of their reactions, as I did with Barbie and her camera. She was photographing left, right, and centre things, weird things, and then she came home. We looked at the results, and I could see why she photographed through a keyhole onto a dress that was somewhere to the left, but it was amazing.
Yeah, it was. In fact, there's so much there. Any person who's creative, whether you're a writer or a potter, or you could use a clay, couldn't you, from the local place, a journalist, musician, it's a place for inspiration. And I know as an artist myself, you get to a point where you've absorbed all of the things that are in your current world, and it's nice to go somewhere else to get inspiration about that world. So anyone who's creative at all would benefit from a bit of country living. I personally didn't think that I was going to gain as much from it as I eventually did, because, as I said about the presence, the place, Liz and Scott, the people who own the property, are awesome, and they've been researching their own history, and as I said, nothing's been thrown away, so it's all still there, and which is why the ABC chose this location for the TV series, because they modelled Oxley Downs, which was the set for the series, totally on another building that's on the property, so it's very authentic.
Still livable, called the Springs, and Scott and Liz said we have access to visit the Springs, but not only that, they have the original little shed or barkhouse on the property that Scott's grandmother every night slept in, left her husband back on the property, and to mark your ground being a squatter, to claim your land, you had to be there 24 hours a day. So she left him and she trundled out to where they'd marked their land, and she slept there the night with her
just a little
lamp,
lantern,
and you can imagine with her clothes on, which brings us
absolutely
to what a female wears. When you're a woman in 1861, you're constricted to your dress, and it took me 20 minutes to get dressed and 10 to 15 minutes to get undressed. I could never undress by myself. I had too many layers on. I had 9 layers to wear, starting from my stockings, and so I'd put my knickers on first, my pantaloons. So these are my daughter's pantaloons. Persephone. So as a 12-year-old, she was allowed to wear pantaloons with buttons down the front for the chest and over the shoulders. Anyone younger than that didn't have buttons. This was cut, and you just slipped on and tied it over the shoulders. So it was a much younger form of underdress. But
what's that bit in the middle? Why isn't there a bit in the middle there?
The middle bit is, because there were no knickers as we know today, the middle bit is where you be able to go to the toilet. So underneath your layers, and I had 9 layers on, you had to be able to find your undergarments from the back. So you lifted up your petticoats, and then your other petticoat, another petticoat, your crinoline, and then your chemise. And then you found the hole, which is this, and you separated it, and then you walked backwards to the toilet because you couldn't turn. And then when you felt that you were against the long drop, you sat, hoping that you sat on the toilet. And then a lot of women want to ask me what type of toilet paper we used. Paper was scarce in 1861. You didn't use toilet paper. When you packed or you moved house, everything was wrapped in muslin or in calico, and so you cut strips of muslin or calico and you use that to wipe yourself. But because you didn't know when the hawker was coming through or when your supplies was coming through, you then washed them and hung them on the line. So it wasn't a very delicate thing to do. And then after you did that, you finished yourself off and you sorted out your clothes and you got out of the long drop, you then had to walk to the pump to wash your hands. So it was to go to the toilet for me was not a quick duck into the loo and out. It's quite an adventure, especially when I'm fully dressed in a crinoline.
Can we see those?
Yes, so
that's the first layer?
That's one of the first layers. And then my daughter would have worn a petticoat, which is this.
This is beautiful linen though.
Beautiful. And
it's beautiful soft linen.
I'm sorry, she would have put her corset on before that. All children from the age of 3 wore corsets.
Goodness
They used
me.
to put them in. And the more buttons or hooks you have here, the higher status you are in society. So I think I had 11 of these. This does fit me, but we won't do it up today. My daughter's lent it to someone. Anyway, you click it up, and you click it up from the bottom first. You click, and then the top, and then you make sure it all joins in, and then someone tightens it.
Look at this, will you? Then you've got someone with their foot on your back going like that. Is that right?
Yes.
Foot?
And then you pull in, you breathe, and you breathe, and you breathe.
Tut, 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 tut. Does that have to come together?
No,
Oh, okay.
It doesn't. It comes as tight as it can. And what happens is that there are different corsets for different areas, but what happens, we found, is that you stop using your stomach muscles when you wore a corset. And so you're being pulled in here, but your tummy pops out here underneath. Though you've got this beautiful dress, you feel like a princess. You don't look as though you have any stomach or any thigh problems or anything like that because you have your crinoline, which in those days would have been made from whalebone.
Oh, okay.
But these aren't whalebone. I think this is the one.
This is the child's one?
This is Persephone's crinoline. My crinoline, my dresses were 6 metres of material.
Oh my goodness.
So I would have worn 3 to 4 petticoats and a chemise and a crinoline and a bustle. This is an evening dress that I have been lent by the Heritage Dancers Association because at the moment I'm studying heritage dancing. And so they've given me this one to wear, but the ones I wore in Outback House were much bigger and much more elaborate with the material used was of that era, 1861, and my jewellery was of 1861, so I wore antique clothes, well, new clothes, but of antique material. But to wear these with a corset and to walk around, when you've got a crinoline, you have to have one hand always picking up to walk, and you only have one hand free. So if you're going out to the pump, or you've got to do anything or carry a bucket, it's totally impractical. You can't do that, which is why often the squatter's wife had a work dress made that you wore without a crinoline. Yes, but you feel like a princess, you look like a princess, but you are a prisoner.
A prisoner in your own clothes.
In your own clothes. You are beautiful, impractical ning-nong, sitting there. And as the squatters, this is historically correct, as the squatter's wife became less, more ornamental, as they rose up in society and their workload decreased, to make themselves important, they increased the size of the crinoline. So that when they walked into a room and sat down, the first thing you noticed was the female in her crinoline, so that she stood out because she couldn't do anything. It's a day dress that the Heritage Group, dance group, has also loaned me.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
It's much heavier to wear. As you,
it's got layers underneath it. Oh, look, it's all lined and everything.
Yes, it's got the layers, and the crinoline that I forgot to show you to put on. This would be my crinoline. Crinoline I had in Outback House that I wore on Oxy Downs didn't have any of the tulle, because I never saw tulle on any of the costumes, so I'm not quite sure if it existed.
It was a different era, perhaps not 20 years later it might have been different, or 20 years earlier it might have been different, because remember they were very fashion conscious. They were very fashion conscious.
That's right. And my clothes, because I didn't come out with the latest boatload, the governess had more of a fashion than mine. But this is...
You can't walk through there, that's too narrow for you.
No, so you have to lift your skirt with 2 hands and walk, and then you lay it down. But my crinoline was actually out there. This is quite a small crinoline, but as you can see, it's when you dance and you move, when the feet stop, the dress keeps going, and that's the princess feel. And your partner, when you dance, may touch you and hold you, but the most exciting thing was to see the ankle. So, so when you lift your skirt and they showed the ankle, that was very exciting. As I know it, and as I experienced being a woman in 1861 during the television show Outback House in 2004, I experienced the difficulties of dress, wearing the corsets and the layers, and not being able to move in any direction very quickly, but also the way you got dressed, where one dressed from the feet backwards, but you did your hair first, because once you've got your corset on, you can't lift your hands above this height, so you can't do your hair or put your jewellery on or even put your earrings on, because your arms are being held down by the corset. The other constraints of being a woman in 1861 was your hairstyle, the lack of shampoos or conditioners, and you used pomade, which was made from animal fat and mixed in with lavender oil, and the way you washed your hair was with scraps of muslin dipped in water with lanolin, and you took each piece and you stripped it of its natural oils, each piece taken, and you dipped it in and you stripped it again, and then you combed it flat, you parting it in the middle, you look absolutely beautiful. And so you're flat like this, and then once you've stripped your hair of the pomade and all the natural oils, you then put your hand into a huge tub of pomade, you rub it, and you rub it back into your hair, and you then do the same hairstyle. So you never let your hair become free or normal, and that's a constraint in itself. You're always trying to make a picture of beauty, even though it was not. You wore no makeup, you couldn't enhance your looks, you only wore jewellery. Pomade is like a dense cream I would associate it with Brill cream. So if you know what Brill cream is, or what gel is, but it's a cream made of animal fat, and to make it smell nice you put lavender oil in it, and that's how you you rinsed it out, and then you put it all back in to make your hair sit beautifully. And then the way you combed your hair was with a comb made of tortoiseshell, or a brush, silver backed, and the bristles are made from pig bristles. So we don't have the stiff bristles that we are used to in a brush today. You brushed, and it's quite a soft motion on the hair, so that's saying brush your hair 700 times a day creates a shine. It comes from just that continual brushing and unknotting, but you wore your hair up every day, and you didn't have the safety pins or the elastics or anything that we have today. Everything was pull thread, so you're constantly trying to keep your appearance looking remarkable. Were very, very expensive, so you probably had two pairs, a pair of silk slippers that you wore around the house, and you had your dress shoe, which was the buttons all the way up the ankle, very, very close, and you needed a shoe hook to get in, and also the button hole, the button hook to lift up the hole and slide the button in, but they weren't very comfortable. You had little heel, and so it was quite a tight fitting. Again, it's very constraining. The best shoe that I wore was my riding boots. They were made for me, and that's what I wore continuously out there unless I had to dress. So yes, shoes, stockings, hair, toiletries didn't exist. So as women today use tampons or pads that are adhesive, we did not. They were what I would call a bota, They're about this big, and they were made of cotton and linen and stuffed inside and sewn and tapered at the end, and so with a loop. And so you took tape and you tied it around your waist and you looped it through one loop between your legs and took it round again and looped it through the other side of the pad, then took it around and tied a bow. So it sort of swung between your legs like this, very uncomfortable. And then when it was used and you had to change, you got your other one, and I was given about 4, so you then washed that one and supposedly hung it on the line discreetly so that no one else could see it. But our periods have actually changed. We have periods starting from the age of 9 now with our youth coming up, but their periods didn't come until they were 15 or 16. And then with your workload out there and your diet, your period actually is very, very light. Mine went to non-existent because of the stress and the workload and my diet. So their periods weren't as heavy as ours are today, and that's the same as your toilet paper. There was no toilet paper because paper was scarce. You used strips of muslin or calico, same process, wiping yourself, and then you'd rinse it and hang it on the line because you didn't know when the hawker or the supply wagon was coming in for you to buy any more. When we were chosen for Outback House, I started reading the letters written by women from 1770 to 1830. They were the first women to cross the Blue Mountains and also the first women to go out with the explorers. And 1 in 3 died in childbirth, but often the babies died through with colds and diseases, but also the lack of water or milk that the women couldn't produce. Or they drowned in the wells. A very, very hard, sad life. And that's why when you go to graveyards, when you travel out west and you come across a lot of, well, it's not just out west, but the old graveyards where they've got the children of 0 to 3 years and they're sharing a grave site probably with other siblings. It was the norm. Yeah, but just talking about the squatter's wife on a station, today the shearers have the right to sack the cook if they come on and the food's not good enough. The shearers have the right from then and to today to sack the cook, and when they sack the cook and they will not work because the food is not good, the squatter's wife must cook, and that is what happened out there. They tried to, the first shearers came on and they tried to say, well, if we don't like the food, we're going to sack her and you will cook. And because of what had happened beforehand, I said no, and they knew not to cross me at that point because we just lost the cook and I wasn't going to cook anymore. But if the squatter left the station to go to work or to go into town or died, the next in charge was the squatter's wife, not the overseer, and that is a very strong point. Those women were extremely competent and very, very strong, and I have a lot of respect for them, and going out there and living that life with no companion, because I was told right through the interview process that I would never have a friend out there, that the closest friend I would have would be the governess, not the cook and not the maid. And I was that as a squatter's wife you had to be able to live with your own company and your husband's company, and that is all. A lot of them were extremely homesick and they wanted news and they wanted companionship, and they often made a good friend in the governess, but the governess was often a daughter who had not married successfully in England, or who had to go and earn her income, so she was sent out here, but within 6 months she was actually married. So another friend was lost and another governess had to be sourced to come out to teach the children. At that point there a lot more men were out there and they wanted to find an educated woman, but a woman who was prepared to work and suffer.